Thank you so much for joining us for PetSure's Pause and Learn series. I'm Danny Houlihan, Chief Veterinary Officer at PetSure. We're joined by Dr Nadine Hamilton, who'll be speaking about positive practice for veterinarians. As a reminder, any advice is general only and is not considered your personal circumstances, so may not be right for you. Cover is subject to the policy terms and conditions. You should consider the relevant product disclosure statement or policy wording available from the relevant provider to decide if a product is right for you. Insurance products are issued by the Whole Art Insurance Company and administered by PetSure Australia through our authorised representatives and our distribution partners. PetSure is a company of animal lovers, providing a sense of security to pet parents through pet insurance. PetSure powers the pet insurance propositions of many well-known brands, including Woolworths, RSPCA, Bow Wow Meow, Pet Insurance Australia, and many others. Additionally, PetSure has transformed the claim experience with the development of Gap Only. If you'd like to find out more about PetSure or Gap Only, please visit our website. We are joined by Dr Nadine Hamilton. Dr Nadine Hamilton is a leading worldwide authority on veterinary wellbeing, author, psychologist, CEO and founder of Love Your Pet, Love Your Vet. As an advocate for the veterinary profession, Dr Nadine founded the charity Love Your Pet, Love Your Vet and partnered with Royal Canin to reduce stigma in veterinary professionals seeking help, raising awareness within the community about the realities of working in the profession and providing psychological and educational support to veterinary professionals. So without any further delay, I'll hand you over to Nadine.
Thanks so much, Danny, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm looking forward to presenting this webinar for you today or this evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this, looking at positive practice. So we're going to be covering a few different areas that I think really encompasses working in the veterinary field or industry. So some of the topics that we're going to cover today, and it's going to be very condensed, there's a lot of information to get through. Maintaining a healthy workplace. So what does a mentally healthy workplace look like and how do we achieve one? Managing client expectations and dealing with difficult conversations. So I'll be going into those a little bit more and giving you some information about that. And then ending up with different sources of support that's available, providing some contact details as well, you know, for anyone who's got any queries or, you know, just needs help and pointing them in the right direction. So very, very briefly, getting involved, I think Danny's already done the introduction here, but you know, as Danny said, I'm a psychologist. I completed my doctoral research into veterinary wellbeing, which was back in 2016. Since then, I wanted to basically take that research and start doing something more and looking at, okay, we've got the research, how do we now start to make a positive difference and really get that paradigm shift happening? And so that was where Love Your Pet, Love Your Vet was formed, which was officially formed in 2017. You know, but we launched our campaign in 2018 and it's just grown from strength to strength. We've gone global. You know, we've had a lot of support for what we've done. So it's really exciting to see that. That's like my little baby. So it's really, really great to see where we're going with that and the direction that we're taking. My doctoral research has been converted into a book, but we took out all the academic stuff. So we tried to make it nice and readable and just flow. And it has got a copy of my evidence-based coping program in the book as well. And we've got a very special offer for you coming up at the end. So stay tuned and bear with me. And for those, obviously, if you're listening to the webinar prior to the 6th of March, we've got the Reach Out Wellbeing Conference happening in Kingscliff in Northern New South Wales, a 2-day event with some amazing guest speakers as well, which is exclusively for the veterinary profession. So super excited about that as well. So getting into it as well, like maintaining a healthy workplace. And so you might think about, what does health mean to you? Does that mean your physical health, your psychological health, your spiritual health? You know, what kind of health are we talking here? And in this presentation, we're actually talking about basically all of those, but it's starting with the mentally healthy workplace. So how do we have a workplace that is psychologically healthy so that we have the room to expand. We have the room to make mistakes without fearing ridicule or, being yelled at or, criticized for it. Having a workplace that we love going to, that we really enjoy being there. And so it's healthy. And when we're in good psychological health, it can then flow on, to our physical health, our spiritual health if you're a spiritual person, and really just, bringing those all together. So I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of information that came out of some research I did back as a fourth year psychology student, looking at what happens when there is conflict in the workplace. It's essentially an unhealthy workplace, but what are the implications of that? As well as what are some of those things that we can do about it to try and develop and maintain a mentally healthy workplace. Some of the attributes of a mentally healthy workplace. We want our leadership, so the people in the leadership positions, we want them to be open and honest with us. That doesn't mean that they have to tell us the company's secrets, but we want transparency. Even if they're not able to share something confidential with you, being able to say, look, I can't share this with you, but I'm just letting you know that we are aware of this issue. Those sorts of things. It's just being open and being honest rather than, oh, no, sorry, I'm in a meeting right now, I can't talk to you, I'll have to get back to you. That sort of thing doesn't really build that trust. So we want our leaders to be leading by example, leading the way, showing that this is the way that we want our team to be. And again, having that transformational leadership approach where you help to transform your team rather than, the old-fashioned transactional approach, which is more as you do this and you do this. So we want to just be open and honest and really start building that trust and that respect, but leading from a place of guidance, I guess, for want of a better word, rather than just dictating to people and micromanaging. Having good mental health support and, making this a priority. There is still a lot of workplaces around, not just within the veterinary profession, holistically, I would say, where there's still a lot of stigma around mental health. It is refreshing to see more and more workplaces taking this on board and taking proactive steps to try and look after their staff and look after their teams. There's still, in my opinion, a long way to go, but we can help with that by making mental health this priority, like sharing with people, checking in with them, are you okay? How's everything doing? Do you need any support? And being able to have things in place, such as your employee assistance programs or like your wellness days or different wellness activities or organising discounts at the local health club or, having a health allowance, where the team can decide how they want their health allowance to be spent. It might be a team building day. It might be massages. It could be a nice healthy lunch, just different things like that to really let people know that we take mental health seriously. And I think particularly in this industry where the mental health, and we know that, the suicide rate is disproportionately high, we want to have that focus on the mental health and well-being. We want more of this to be happening. Being able to have workloads that are manageable. So one of the sources of stress is where the workload is unrealistic. And that can be where you are just simply too busy. You don't even get a break. You don't have time to even go to the bathroom or even just have a glass of water because it's just one thing after the other and you just don't know what to expect. And some of you are probably nodding right now going, yep, I'm hearing you, that's our workplace. And yet there are other workplaces who do it very well, and enforce lunch breaks, which I think should be a priority. We need our breaks and we have to take our breaks. But making sure that we're not putting too much pressure on people. And I appreciate that this is difficult, particularly, with a shortage in veterinary professionals that is, happening at a global level. But it doesn't mean that, our other staff that are still there should be taking on board 3 times as much work. So we need to be able to manage that effectively. So it's, either spread evenly or, doing what we can to acknowledge that or, to address it. Because if it doesn't get addressed, we're putting these unrealistic demands on our staff and overloading them with work, you know, that could lead them down the path to stress, burnout, depression. You know, we don't want that, and ultimately they may leave. So we want to be able to look after and like really treasure our teams, our co-workers or our supervisors or our subordinates, if, you know, if we're in the management level. Being able to provide a good work-life balance. Work-life balance doesn't mean 50-50. It's not 50% of our time at work, 50% of our time at home. It's about providing a balance that works for you. For some people, it may be 60-40 or 70-30. So that might be, I can spend 70% of my time doing work-related activities, and 30% of my time, you know, is my me time, you know, when I socialize or I have my hobbies or my leisure activities. If that works for you and it's not causing any distress, then that's fine. But it's making sure that you have some balance. Quite often, we're that busy with our work, and particularly if our workplace is unhealthy, and I mean like mentally unhealthy, maybe physically unhealthy as well. If that happens and we're just constantly at work and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm just overloaded with work, this is ridiculous. And then we come home and our home life isn't healthy. And again, I don't just mean like nutritionally or like exercise. You know, we might be living in an environment where there's, you know, a lot of conflict or a lot of aggression, or just people just don't get on, whatever it may be, then we don't really have that balance. So for some people, going to work is their happy place and home may not be so happy. If they're able to sort of find a balance between that, and work is like, oh, this is where I get to switch off from everything that's going on at home, so I'm actually okay at work. It may be the opposite for other people. As long as there's that balance and it's not causing any distress or negative effects, then that's okay. It's about finding that balance that works for you. Ultimately, yeah, to be great in a perfect world, if our home life was awesome and our work life was awesome, you know, that would be the ideal. But again, it's probably not going to be that realistic for some people. We also want to make sure that we're developing our employees, allowing them the space to grow, you know, and to learn and develop new skills. And there can be I guess, a perception that a lot of people, they don't want their staff to be too good, because then they might leave or they might look better than you, or, you know, whatever other perception is there. But if you make your workplace a good enough workplace, you know, like an employer of choice, the aim is that it's so good there, they don't want to go anywhere else. So, you know, we want to be able to help our employees go and grow. And if we can do that, you know, that's testament to us to sort of go, you know what, I've helped this person grow. I'm really sad that they don't want to stay here or they're not going to be working here anymore, but I know that I'm part of, you know, their career path. Because again, if they don't have that ability to grow, there's a fair chance that they will leave anyway to find another job that will allow them that opportunity. So, you know, just being able to, you know, if someone's got a special interest in learning something, allowing them the space to do that. Having an environment or a culture where it's respectful, which has to be earned. You can't just demand it, same as trust. But that is fair. Like, we don't always like some of the decisions that made, but are they fair? You know, again, firm but fair, you know, is often a good way to look at things as well. That, you know, okay, I don't like the fact that we have to all start at 7 a.m. tomorrow, but I understand why, and it is good because we get to finish early on Tuesday afternoon. You know, it's those sorts of things that, you know, that helps to create that really nice workplace. Allowing our employees to feel included, and maybe it's some of the decision making. It might not be at a really high level, but having some input, allowing them to come up with ideas and like seriously considering them and like looking to implement them if they're feasible to bring in there. Because when people feel like they're included in things and they're having some input, they're more likely to become more engaged in that process. Having good working arrangements. For some people, that might be having that flexibility of shifts. It might be start early, finish early. Again, that may not be appropriate in your workplace, depending on the nature of your workplace. But it might be, look, okay, I know you've done every Saturday for the last 6 weeks. Let's make sure that we schedule you the next 3 weeks off. Or having an environment, if there are opportunities, and I know from the clinical aspect, this may not be possible, but not everyone working in the industry is working in a clinical capacity. Are there options, to work from home or have some kind of flexibility there? If someone is helping put your website together for your clinic, are there opportunities for them to do that at home rather than having to stay there till 10 o'clock at night in the practice? At least at home, they might be with their family, or, they don't have to worry about traveling late, or those sorts of things. Again, I know it has to be practical, but just getting creative and looking at how else could we do this? Maybe it's not fair that the same person is rostered on every Thursday night. So being able to talk to the team and say, how can we make this a fair process? If that person doesn't mind being rostered on every Thursday night, that's fine. But we want to make it fair on everybody. So, that good job design and working arrangements are really important as well. Some of the warning signs, again, this isn't a diagnosis, but these can be an indication of some of the issues that can go on when there is a mentally unhealthy workplace. So you might notice people, or again, this might be reflective of yourself, there might be some behavioural changes. So if somebody is generally always early to work, brings coffee on the way for everyone, stays back to help everyone empty the bins and clean up, and then all of a sudden they're arriving late to work, they might be looking like they've just got out of bed, their hair's not tidy, or, whatever it is, it's something that's out of character, could be a warning sign that there's something going on. So if somebody is normally like grumpy and is always turning up late, that might just be normal for them. But if it's sort of like, hang on, this person is always like this and now they're like this, what's going on? Again, they could just be very subtle things, or they could be pretty big things as well that are going on. There could be some emotional things going on. Maybe they're crying a lot more, or they just seem to be really irritable and blunt, or not really caring how their wording is coming across, like some of the words that they're using, which again may indicate that they're angry or they're frustrated. So again, you might notice that, or if you notice, every time you look around, they're wiping their eyes, because they've been teary. If this is out of character, or you notice an increase in it, or starting it for the first time, again, could be another indication. There could be some physical changes as well. There could be some health problems. So, someone might be constantly sick. They just get over one thing and then they've got something else and then something else. They could have weight issues. It may be gaining weight. So they may be comfort eating, or they could have some health issues going on. Or there might be a significant weight loss, which may come from not eating, or maybe they're over exercising. So it's like, okay, what's going on there? If someone, is healthy eating, and they are intentionally trying to lose weight healthily, yes, you would, hope to see them losing weight. But this would be sort of in the absence of that. It's sort of like, oh my gosh, they're looking like they've lost a lot of weight lately, and I didn't know that they were dieting, or they don't need to lose weight, or what's going on there? Because again, there could be some physical changes going on. Also cognitive. So, the thought processes, they might not be able to concentrate. They might be in the middle of something and someone says, oh, did you remember to, fill up the medication cabinet? And then they're like, what? No, what do you mean? When did you ask me to do that? You didn't ask me to do that. Or it might be, oh my gosh, you've asked them for something, I can't think of a pharmaceutical medication or something like that, but you've asked them to bring maybe Fluffy's file in, and then they bring you Rufus's file instead, and you sort of go, oh no, I meant Fluffy, oh sorry, oh gosh, and they might seem a little bit flustered, or they might burst out crying. Again, these sorts of things can be indicative that there may be something going on. So it's really important to start looking at a lot of these things and really being mindful to the changes. I don't mean like scrutinizing everything, because sometimes we do just have a bad day, if we're tired and we might not be as their happy, bubbly selves. But again, these are things where you sort of go, okay, I've noticed this more frequently. This isn't just a once off. There's some of the things that I would be looking at. Again, one of the other things which I'm going to talk about a little bit more is the workplace conflict. This is a big one. Again, back in the day when I was doing my, 4th year psychology, it was workplace conflict. We didn't really refer to it as workplace bullying, which we do now. But there are some implications from the workplace conflict as well, which has been researched. So we've been able to validate that, and I'll explain that here. So when you think about the amount of time that those people who are working spend at work, for some people they spend more time at work than they do in their personal lives, or at home or with their loved ones. We all have the right to be able to be like physically and psychologically safe at work, but unfortunately that doesn't always happen for various reasons. But when there is that conflict in the workplace, or you might think of it as like a toxic workplace, or a toxic culture, or an unhealthy culture, again, conflict, can be just arguments and, that bickering kind of thing going on, or speaking behind someone's back. When there's just that tension, when something's gone down, you're like, oh gosh, you can feel this. Regardless of whether that person is a full-time worker or a part-time worker, or whether or not they are like a superior or a co-worker, that level of conflict, when it's unresolved in the workplace, can affect the person's level of stress. It can affect their level of job satisfaction, so how satisfied they're feeling with working in that workplace and doing that job. The productivity, so how much output are they giving? How much are they actually giving back to the organization? If someone is super productive, they may do 10 dentals in a day, but when there's conflict going on, you may see that decrease to 5 a day. Again, just as an example, obviously not exact numbers, but just an idea of that productivity. Or it's like, oh, normally this person gets all of this done in one day, but all of a sudden they're not even getting half of that done. What's going on? Because there's less motivation to be there. They're preoccupied, thinking of other things. They really don't want to be there. So it's really taking all the energy just to be in the workplace, let alone concentrate on what's going on. The commitment to the organization decreases. Absenteeism increases. So there is a relationship there with job satisfaction and the level of absenteeism. So if you notice people are being absent more, or again, this might be you, that there's more and more sickies going on, or like, oh, I need to take holiday leave again, or I'm taking leave without pay. Again, unless there is something going on that about, if they've got health issues and they need time off to go to medical appointments, well, that's like an explained thing. But this is where it's sort of like, oh, are they sick again? When they sick last Wednesday and the Wednesday before and then the Thursday before that? But ultimately, if this conflict isn't resolved, then it leads to an intention to leave the organization. So you think about, the workplace, you think about some of the best workers in that place. And again, this may be you, it may be your co-workers, it may be your team members if you are, in a leadership or management position, that if this conflict isn't resolved, then the people involved are more likely to leave. And what if they are like your best staff? You don't want them to leave. You don't want them to go through that. You don't want to lose them because they are so valuable to your organization and to your team. But ultimately, that is the end result. And that is backed up by research, and it's pretty scary to think. And I know personally, I've left 3 jobs because of other people I've worked with, and conflict at work that was unresolved, and it was like, no, I don't get paid enough to stay here and have to put up with this kind of stuff. So I know personally I've done it, and that was actually what led me to doing my research way back then, and looking at that. So it should be taken seriously. And I mentioned on the previous slide there, it doesn't matter whether the conflict is at a co-worker level or whether like a supervisor or a leader, the impacts on the organization are still the same. So as I said, the productivity declines. So there's less productivity, which affects the bottom line. If people aren't performing as much and either selling a product or producing a service, then the money isn't coming into the organization. The organization starts to lose money. So that's sort of like a no-brainer, I guess, with that one. But again, that productivity, the level of absenteeism, as I mentioned, previously, the absenteeism can increase. But what happens there is not only have you lost that person's productivity for the period of time that they're absent, but it either puts the extra workload on the other people that are in the workplace, or they have to hire someone to come in and cover this person's workload or their shifts. Imagine if, this person who's absent from work, if they're a permanent or part-time employment and they're entitled to sick leave, the organisation is paying them their sick leave, so they're paying them not to be there. Plus, they may have to pay, a casual employee to come in and fill that shift. So it's kind of costing them twice. Again, that can be serious on the bottom line, particularly if there's a lot of conflict and a lot of absenteeism going on. The job satisfaction, if people aren't satisfied at their jobs, and you may be able to relate to this yourself if you've had a job or maybe you're in one now that you just don't feel satisfied in, do you feel really motivated to give it 150% and do everything to really be the best that you can be and make this organization the best that you can be? Probably unlikely, because the motivation will be, I hate this place, I don't want to be here, I wish I could find another job. So you may not be, excuse me, having that level of job satisfaction because you don't enjoy being there because of the conflict and what's going on. The level of commitment to that organization, as with the job satisfaction, if you don't feel supported or you are having that conflict, who wants to be there and keep going to work when you know that other people, may be approaching you and it may lead in conflict, or you feel like they're talking behind your back, or, they're being passive aggressive towards you. So the commitment to the organization, again, decreases as well, which again affects the bottom line of that business. It can also create stress. And again, stress, if someone is stressed, it may lead to more sick leave. If it's directly related to the workplace, they may choose to lodge a workers' compensation claim. That costs the business. Again, in the premiums, and then the premiums can increase when there's claims. But if you're having to pay someone who is on like sick leave, that's, through a medical process, you're having to pay their sick leave as well as paying someone to come in and do their job. So, all of these things can have a really negative impact. And that's why, having a mentally healthy workplace is so important. And of course, the last one, intention to leave. If your staff are leaving, what happens, if you're not able to replace them? So you've got a gap. Again, the bottom line is affected because they're not contributing to their part of it, where the money would normally be coming through from the work that they're doing. It may cost you in advertising costs, like if you're placing ads on Seek or, job advertisements, or maybe paying a recruitment agency. It's all of that that comes into it, that again, you may not necessarily think, oh, this is just a bit of workplace conflict, a couple of people or a few people having a bit of an argument, but it does have such a big approach, I guess, or effect on that workplace when you look at it from this perspective. Again, sometimes you go through, oh, I just don't like this person, blah, 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 but look at what's actually going on underneath the surface that we're not necessarily so aware of. So if there is a high turnover, so there are a lot of people leaving the workplace, and maybe it's been like that for either a long period of time or all of a sudden just started happening for no apparent reason. If everyone's getting ready to retire and they've worked in the business of 50 years, okay, that may not, indicate that there's conflict. But You know, in the absence of those things, again, if this is just happening for no obvious reason, or maybe you're well aware that there's issues going on, but you're like, oh my gosh, you know, we're losing a lot of staff. What's going on here? It could mean that the staff are exhausted, and I know people are exhausted. I think after, you know, the 2020 year with the pandemic, you know, particularly the effect on, you know, veterinary workers still being essential workers, you know, split shifts, curbside appointments, longer hours that you're working. You know, you may have a few extra days off, but you're working longer hours to make up for it. Dealing with the customers. The customers are exhausted. They're all over it as well. So, you know, people are exhausted, and we've only just started the new year as well, but it seems to be that continued effect, because you've gone from this massive big year of pandemic right into busy season and, you know, trauma season as well for a lot of the wildlife. So you really don't seem, or may not feel, that you've actually had time to catch your breath and have a break yet. So again, that exhaustion could be what's causing the high turnover. Lack of job satisfaction. There may be a lack of opportunities for career growth or career expansion. So someone might say, look, I'm really interested in learning more about surgical work, but they never have the opportunity, especially if the opportunity is possible. Like some, you know, it's not always going to be possible, but, you know, if they just don't feel like they're able to grow and learn new things, and that things are just static, again, it can send the message that the organisation doesn't care about them, and whatever, you know, particularly if they have high aspirations for their career. The working conditions may not be too good. So maybe you have a great team, but the clinic is really dirty and just cluttered. The machinery may not work, or the equipment may not work so well, or it might be in a dingy back street somewhere that's just really not appealing. You know, or it could be that, you know, this is great. We work in a beautiful clinic. It's awesome. But, you know, we're expected to work 23 hours a day, you know, 6 days a week. So again, you know, it could be a numerous things. Again, there could be workplace conflict, but ultimately that low commitment to the organization coupled with that low job satisfaction equates to a higher intention to leave the organization. So again, you know, if people aren't committed to the workplace, if they're not getting the job satisfaction out of it, then there is a higher likelihood that they're going to leave. And there's still more, as if that wasn't enough to deal with. But there are also links between the interpersonal communication, you know, that communication between the team members, whether they're, you know, they're co-workers or whether they're leaders and co-workers. That coupled with boredom, and even though you may be really busy, it doesn't mean you don't get bored. Doing the same thing over and over and over again with no change, no variety, can lead to boredom. Also, those unsatisfactory relationships. So, you know, if people just don't get on or don't like each other, you know, that is also associated here with that workplace conflict and ultimately intention to leave. Absenteeism and tenure can be affected by the level of job satisfaction. So if someone's really, really satisfied with their job, then it could be more likely that they're going to remain in the organisation, you know, unless they have to move to a different suburb or something like that. But, you know, all things considered, if the job satisfaction is lower, then there's a higher likelihood, again, that there may be more time off work, whether it's sick leave, annual leave, unpaid leave, and also how likely they are to stay working at that organisation. And also that lack of communication. I am going to talk about communication shortly. Where the supervisor, maybe a manager, a leader, however you refer to them, you know, but someone going up the chain of hierarchy, if the communication isn't effective and it isn't done in, I guess, an assertive or respectful, clear and coherent way, then that can actually result in a level of stress for the staff. And when there's that level of stress, there are different things that can happen. So When the stress kicks in, there might be really low morale. So if you sort of go, no one's excited to be here, everyone's doom and gloom, you know, they're all complaining, no one's smiling anymore. It's like, ugh. Again, you know, what's going on? Are they stressed? Has it already led to, you know, depression? Are they getting burnt out? Their motivation levels are likely to be low. Again, you know, the depression, the burnout, the absenteeism, and ultimately that increase in turnover. So again, you know, communication is a really relevant point here as well. And which sort of goes back to what I said right at the start, you know, about a mentally healthy workplace, having that, the leadership communication and leadership style where it's open and honest and transparent, you know, still communicating. You don't have to tell them everything, you know, and give away confidential information, but it is important to have that communication happening. And we want it to be assertive communication, not any of the other communication styles. So just a really quick look here at some of the signs of stress as well, because some people don't realize what stress is. They don't recognize the symptoms, or they might not understand it. And again, bear this in mind. You might be able to relate to some of these, or you may have noticed it in those around you. This isn't a diagnosis, so please don't self-diagnose, but please do use this as an indication. So the more that you can relate to, the higher the possibility that you may be stressed, of course, but just because you're having these things, don't automatically assume it is stress, because it could be something else going on. But again, these are just some common signs of stress. The feeling of fatigue, the headaches, for some people, the coronary problems, that could include heart palpitations, it could include chest pain, and sometimes the chest pain comes because when we're stressed or when we're anxious, we're not breathing nice and calmly from our diaphragm, and so we're nearly in that stage of hyperventilation. Our lungs aren't able to get the air that they need, so they can't inflate and deflate as they should be doing naturally, which can also cause some of that pain. Some people get really paranoid. It's like, oh my gosh, and you know, really common explanation of stress, and I have personally experienced this when I was a third-year psychology student, ironically doing a stress management assignment, is that feeling of out of control. And I don't mean out of control as in, oh, I'm just going to party till 4 o'clock and then I'm just going to go straight to work and then I'm going to party again. Not that kind of out of control, more like a detached from reality. So it's sort of like, oh my gosh, I feel like my head is out of control because I'm aware of where I am and what I'm doing, but everything seems like a blur. It feels very surreal. You feel like you're on the outside looking in. It's that kind of out of control feeling that some people get, particularly if they're really stressed. Irritability is a really common one. You know, when we're stressed, like, oh, don't talk to me. Or, you know, it's always the time when you're stressed, and then that's when you drop your keys or you can't find your keys. It's like, oh, my phone didn't charge overnight, so now my battery's nearly flat. And then you go to get in the car and someone's blocked you in, and then you finally get your car going, and then there's road work, so you're running late and you get every red light. Then you can't find a park when you get there. So by the time you come into work, you're already frazzled. And it obviously makes us irritable. It can also come from the lack of sleep as well, if you're having insomnia or sleep disturbances. But it can also lead to depression with stress. It's why it's so important to get stress under control, because ultimately, and this might sound really scary, but ultimately stress can kill you. You know, when you think about what's happening when we're stressed, our cortisol is pumping, the adrenaline is pumping. Our bodies aren't designed to be in that state of fight flight on a long-term basis. And that's sort of what's happening when we're stressed and when we're anxious. We're constantly, you know, up in this really, really high hypervigilant, hyperarousal state. We want to be able to be in a nice, calm state to be able to keep us nice and calm and relaxed. For some people, again, stress can be a precursor to anxiety. So you can be stressed without necessarily being anxious or depressed. You can be anxious without necessarily being stressed. So I guess the difference, anxiety is typically that worry. It's like, oh my gosh, what if this happens? And what if that happens? Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm so worried about am I going to get the job? Am I going to get the loan? Did I pass my exams? You know, we're worrying about things. Whereas stress could be, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. I've got 5 more consults to do today. We've just had 3 emergencies come in, and I haven't written up my case notes from yesterday yet. And I have to leave here at 6 o'clock because I've got to, you know, take my children to their soccer practice, and I'm the only one that can do it. And that's that kind of stress, just feeling overwhelmed, like there's just so much pressure, and it's more than we're able to cope with. You know, we don't have the resources. I guess the demands that are placed on us are bigger than our capacity to cope with them. You know, it's another way of looking at stress. It is also important as well. There's good stress called eustress, and then the not so good stress, which is the distress. We're looking at the distress here. So I guess to sort of sum up from a workplace perspective, again, we want that communication. We want it open, honest, transparent. We want people to feel that they can communicate in a respectful and assertive way. You know, but it's really important to be able to feel like you can go and talk to this person or that person, particularly if you're concerned or if there is conflict, being able to, you know, talk to someone who is able to address it. Without feeling like you're going to be ridiculed or, you know, punished for it. But keeping that communication flowing, and it's my philosophy that communication is the core foundation of pretty much everything. It also has, you know, in a mentally healthy workplace, those leaders, again, that transformational leadership rather than the transactional, do as I say, micromanagement kind of leadership. They want to demonstrate what it's like to be a good leader so people know to follow them. You know, if a leader is doing this and they're telling their staff to do that, what kind of an example is that setting? You know, so it's like leading by example. Being supportive and showing that you're capable of doing it. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect and always have all the answers, because that's not realistic. But it's about saying, okay, actually, I actually don't know what's going on, you know, for the team meeting next Friday. Let me find out for you though. And communicating that back to the team. Having an environment or a culture that promotes that psychological health and safety, but also self-care. And again, that can be encouraging people. It's like, look, I've noticed you've worked till 8 o'clock every night this week. We need to make sure that you finish tonight at 5 o'clock. Again, you know, doing those sorts of things. And sometimes, yes, it might mean reshuffling, but the bottom line is, you know, if you wear your staff out and they end up being burnt out, they're not going to be able to perform at their best, and unlikely that they're going to be able to stay in that workplace. So we need to really, really make sure that we are looking after our staff and ourselves if we're working there as well. Having those flexible practices, again, if it's possible, there may be options, you know, every alternate weekend, or being able to, you know, switch from a morning shift to an afternoon shift, or, you know, just those sorts of things, you know, that can come in that can just make a little bit of a difference. And again, having the communication, those interactions with staff that are dignified and respectful. And I just noticed the little end of the words there is cut off, so sorry about that, but it does say respectful on the end there. So again, you know, we want it to be a nice environment to work. Think about what your ideal workplace would look like. How can you try and tailor your workplace to that as much as is what is within your control? You know, what would that look like? How would you be acting differently if you were in, you know, your dream workplace? So this is about also taking responsibility for yourself and for your own actions. Providing this support, you know, making sure that you have support, access, resources, and that things are laid out easily. If you provide an EAP service or an employee assistance program in the workplace, you know, please make sure your staff know where to find it. If they're in distress and they're like, okay, I need to talk to someone right now, and then they can't access the staff resources where the numbers are and they can't find it anywhere, you may miss that opportunity. So you want to make sure that people know where to access it. If you send pay slips out, maybe having some of the support phone numbers on their pay slip. If you do provide EAP, maybe making sure that the EAP phone number or website or contact details are listed on their pay slips. You know, just little things like that, whether it's a poster in the workplace with the number, or you have little business cards with, you know, this is where you find this. Like, make it easy to access, and making sure that the staff know how and where to access it. Because it is, you know, in my work that I do with working with vet professionals, I hear that quite often, like, oh, I wouldn't even know where to start looking, or I had to search through 10 different pages on the intranet before I could find it, or we don't have anything there. I don't even know who our EAP provider is, or even if we have an EAP provider. So again, you know, when people are ready to reach out, we want to make sure that they can access that support easily. Listening to the employees, you know, taking their concerns seriously. Like, it might sound really trivial, you know, if somebody's saying, look, I just can't bear to do another euthanasia this week, you know, and you might go, well, I don't have any problems doing it, so suck it up. But for them, this could be a major deal, you know, so just making sure that we are taking them seriously, we are listening to them, and we're taking it on board regardless of whether we think it's trivial. You know, sometimes it might seem like really silly things. They might go, oh, I really just need to finish early every Friday because I can go and get a discount on the ice cream down at the shop. You know, again, it might be, okay, maybe that's not really as important as something else. But again, take it seriously, because maybe that means something to them. There may be something behind that. Having a trusting culture, even considering things like mentoring or buddy programs, especially if you have new staff. You know, I know it's very hard to reach out and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or where do I find this? And some people do find it really hard to keep asking, but they're like, well, if you don't ask, you're not going to be able to find out. But they don't know. They don't want to keep bugging the same person over again, or feel like they're being seen as incompetent, which isn't always the case. But again, you know, making sure that there is someone there that they can talk to. Even, you know, maybe they're a lead vet and they don't have anyone else to talk to. Who do they go to? You know, so it might be a mentor from another clinic, you know, or someone else that you have an arrangement with who can provide that mentoring service for them. Having regular debriefs and checking in with your staff, you know, but really, like, genuinely listening to them. You know, it's like, say, how are you going? Is everything okay? Or you don't have to pry and be nosy, but if you notice that someone was upset, you know, for a few days at work, you know, being able to check up on them, just say, I just wanted to check up how you're going after that, you know, because it can make a really big difference. And ultimately, like, listen, you know, listen and actually hear what they're saying, rather than just listening to respond to what they're saying. Don't judge them. You know, like, if you've ever had to come out and say to someone, I need help, or I'm not coping, or I'm feeling really stressed, that's really hard to do. You know, for most people, that is really, really hard. You don't want someone laughing at you if you've just done that. You know, if you've put yourself out there and you're feeling vulnerable, you don't want people to go, oh my God, are you serious? What have you got to be stressed about? This is nothing. You should see what I had to go through. You don't want to be that. You know, if someone is trusting you enough to come and talk to you, you know, then please respect that, and, you know, do what's in your capacity to be able to help. It might just be referring them to their doctor, or, you know, maybe you have a mental health first aid officer in the workplace. Again, you know, not judging what they're going through, because everybody is going through something, you know, and we're all doing the best we can in this thing called life. You know, so try and reassure them. They might go, I know this is so stupid, but every time I see that a black dog coming in, I just want to cry. It just reminds me of my dog that I lost last year. You know, it's like, that's totally okay. You know, I get that every time I see a ginger cat. You know, or just reassure them, like, it's okay, you know, to go through that. If it's something that needs some help, and, you know, maybe something significant, let's work through that. Let's help them to get that. Because again, you know, if somebody trusts you enough to open up and talk to you, you don't want to lose that trust. You know, it's a big deal to be able to do that. So that sort of leads into, I know we were talking about expectations, but there's actually two kinds of expectations here. And again, the expectations can affect our time at work. And it may, like, we may have a great workplace, but the expectations that are placed on us are just not realistic at all. Excuse me, it doesn't mean that our clients are all horrible, but they may just, be watching a lot of the shows that may be on TV or movies where there's always a happy outcome when the animal goes off to see the vet. And so they have this expectation that you can fix anything. We need to know how to manage that. So again, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're rude expectations, but just expectations in general. So this was actually something I researched in my doctoral studies, and it was found like the expectations was one of the top 5 contributing factors to burnout and suicide in the veterinary profession. And there was 2 kinds of expectations. So the first expectation was those expectations that others place on you. This could be your clients, your co-workers, your family, your friends, your neighbours who know that you're a vet and expect, oh, well, I know if anything happens to Fluffy in the middle of the night, I'll just go and knock on your door and you'll be able to fix Fluffy, right? Those sorts of things. But it can also be particularly the unrealistic expectations that, you removed that lump from my dog 5 years ago. Why has it come back now? You didn't do your job properly. You should have known that. Why didn't you do this? Why has it come back? Without, them sort of going, well, actually, how was I supposed to know that it may go back? Or maybe you did say, look, I can't guarantee this isn't going to grow back, but let's keep an eye on it. And, for 5 years, we've had it under control. Same as in the medical world, someone goes and has something removed. There's no guarantee it may not come back, depending what the body part is, of course. But if it's a growth or, like a wart or something like that, or, just because you've removed a mole on their left arm doesn't mean they're not going to get a mole on their right arm. So again, just these unrealistic expectations, or probably the most common one is those expectations from the clients who have maybe their 15 or 20-minute consult, whatever you offer, and they come in and they want an instant diagnosis for Fluffy. They also want a complete cure. They want to have their session for free because they have the expectation you should be a community service. So why should I have to even pay you for this? And that's basically it. I mean, how realistic is that? You don't even know this animal perhaps, or, all of a sudden Fluffy's presented with this, these symptoms. You don't know, exactly what's going on with that animal because the animal can't tell you. So you have to figure out that. You also have to build that, I guess, that trust and the rapport with the animal, who may be aggressive or may miraculously turn into a feral cat the minute they get in the clinic. You're dealing with all of that as well as these clients that come in, well, what is it? What's going on? And how do we fix it? Can you fix it now? I don't want to have to come back next week. I can't afford that. I haven't got the time to do that. So all those sorts of things that they're just unrealistic. It's unrealistic to expect that you're going to be able to solve everything in a single consult. It's just not realistic. Yes, absolutely, there may be things that you can, but it's not always going to happen. And other people, and some of you may have seen those memes that are around, this is what my family think I do at work all day. This is what my friends think I do at work all day, patting the puppies and kittens and all the rest. But, this is actually the reality of what I do. And it's so true. Again, just people just have these unrealistic expectations, and it may be that they've had a prior experience where the vet staff performed what felt like a miracle. They brought this animal back to life, or they found something that was going on and were able to treat it, and the animal lived for another 10 years. So again, that then sits in their mind, oh, well, vets can fix anything. Again, it's not realistic to expect that is always going to be the case. The other kind of expectations are those that you place on yourself. Oh my gosh, I have to get this right first time. I can't make a mistake. I have to know all the answers. I can't ask anybody for help. I have to do everything perfectly. Otherwise, people will think I'm incompetent, or I'm going to feel like an imposter. They're just not realistic, and don't place that kind of pressure on yourself. If you are the kind of person that does that, then don't, because again, you're never going to be able to meet every single high or unrealistic expectation that you have. It's just not realistic. You know, it's better to sort of go, my expectation is that I will do the best that I can with the information and the resources that I have. You know, that way you're being truer to yourself, but you're setting yourself up more for success than for failure. Because so many times I hear that, it's like, oh, well, I should have known that that was going to happen. It's like, how could you have known that that puppy was going to go into cardiac arrest? There was no sign, there was no indication at all. How could you possibly have known that? How were you to know that this cat was going to have a reaction to the anesthetic? Again, you know, there may be things that you go, okay, this is a potential side effect, you're prepared for that. But there are going to be some things out there that are just unknown. You know, so you can't possibly know absolutely everything about absolutely everything. And when you place those expectations on yourself, it just leads to stress and, you know, burnout for some people, depression, and unfortunately suicide when that's happening. So how do you cope when these are the expectations that are placed on you? So these are just some quick and easy suggestions. You could ask yourself, are these expectations realistic? Is it realistic to think that I can diagnose, treat, and cure this animal in 20 minutes for free? No, probably not. Again, depends what it is, but probably more often than not, no, it's not, particularly if it's something complex. Is it realistic to expect blah, blah, blah? So you're asking yourself, is it realistic? Rather than going, I should be able to do this, I have to do this. If it's not realistic, then it's just going to end up worse for you. And then, you know, cue the stress and the anxiety and the psychological stuff that kicks in. Is there any evidence to suggest that I'm not good enough, or I'm incompetent, or I've got no idea what I'm doing, or I'm an imposter? Is there any solid evidence? In other words, convince me that you're not good enough. Convince me that you're incompetent, because there is unlikely to be any evidence for it other than what your mind tells you. And just because it's in your mind, it doesn't mean it's real. So again, is there any evidence to suggest this? So if maybe your client said, you're an idiot, you've got no idea what you're doing. And you're overwhelmed with that, and you take that on board and you believe it. But is there any evidence that says that you're stupid or you're not good enough? Of course not. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing if that were the case. You know, so try and I guess like stack the deck with the positive things. It's like when you're feeling like you're not good enough at something, find evidence that contradicts that. You know, if we're feeling, oh, I'm no good as a vet. Well, hang on. How many people even get accepted to vet school? How many people successfully complete vet school? You know, if it was that easy, then everyone would be doing it. So when you look at that, it's very easy to sort of go, yeah, that's really not that realistic, is it? To think that I'm not good enough, because clearly I was good enough to do this, I was good enough to do that. You know, and often, you know, if it's an expectation from someone else, it's usually more of a reflection of them. So I have this expectation you're going to cure my cat, but this is because I don't know where else to turn, and I just hope that you know what you're doing, because I know I can't. So I'm struggling with the fact I can't save my cat, but I really, really hope that you can. You know, again, so it's not necessarily always about you. Sometimes it's more about what's going on for them. And is it helpful to think in this way? Is it helpful to keep beating yourself up and putting yourself down? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But then underlying all of that, you can ask yourself, so what do these things say about me? If I'm thinking that I'm not good enough, or that my clients are saying this, and I'm buying into it and paying that all of my attention and acting as if it were true, what does that actually say about me? It's like, maybe I don't really have very good self-confidence or self-esteem. Okay, why is that? Or what could I do about that? How could I change that or try and improve that, you know, or address it? So some of the things, again, that you can do, I'm a personal believer in using coping strategies, evidence-based. My personal preference is acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. and obviously, you know, going into a session on how ACT works is beyond the scope of this webinar, but I personally like using ACT because I find it's very much a common sense approach. But just some quick things that you can take from that are reminders that just because you're thinking it, it doesn't mean it's real. So I may be thinking that we've got purple hail outside. It doesn't mean it's real, you know, and it's not. We don't have purple hail outside. So again, just because I'm thinking it, it doesn't mean it's real. So why should any of my other thoughts be any more real? They're just thoughts. Our thoughts are just words, or they're just stories that our mind tells us. And this might come as a bit of a shock, but it's not your thoughts that is the problem. It's your actions or how you respond or what you do about those thoughts. That's the problem. So it's your actions have the consequences, not the thoughts. So you could have the thought about going and eating all of those Tim Tams in the fridge. If you do go and eat them, there'll be a particular set of consequences. If you choose not to go and eat them, there'll be a different set of consequences. You need to decide which one is the better outcome for you in the long run. And remember, you're in control of your behavior and you can control how you respond. So whether they're your own thoughts, whether they're comments that people have made, other people's behavior, what's going on in the environment, you are in control of how you respond. No one else can control that except you. So you're able to, or once you're able to be mindful, recognize what's going on, and then choose how you want to respond to it in line with what you feel is the best possible thing for you in the long run. And again, you know, acceptance and commitment therapy goes into that in a lot more detail. There is a section on it in my book as well. And again, stay tuned for the offer at the end if you haven't already become familiar with acceptance and commitment therapy. So I guess sort of flowing in now, we've had the expectations, we've had, you know, what we want our healthy workplace to look like, you know, and in the workplace, we want to be able to effectively deal with those expectations that are placed on us or we're placing on ourselves, but also looking at difficult conversations. And this may be with customers, it may be with your team members. Again, this ties into that mentally healthy workplace, because if you remember, you know, where my philosophy is that communication is at the core of everything. So we want to be able to make sure that we know how to have those conversations, good, bad, or indifferent. So first of all, I think it's important to know from a customer perspective, or again, might be a team worker, but why are people difficult? You know, so if someone's coming in and you find the communication from them rude or offensive in whatever way, it's important to look beyond that. So rather than just taking it personally and just going, they're so rude, why would they be rude to me? What did I do wrong? I'm a nice person. So rather than sort of taking it on board from that level, just take a stop back and just look at what might be going on for them. I don't mean this as saying we need to excuse their behavior, because I don't think you know, that there's no need for people to be rude, and I think everyone can control that, but sometimes understanding what could be going on for them helps us to not take it so personally. So for example, they could have stuff going on in their personal life. They could be so overwhelmed with things that they're dealing with that they're just not their normal self. So if they're feeling stressed, you know, as we looked at in the last topic, if someone's feeling stressed, they might be feeling more irritable and more short-tempered than normal, because they're just so caught up in, how am I going to fix this problem? I don't know what to do about it. They haven't got the capacity to go, oh, I need to be really nice and respectful here. Again, it doesn't make it okay, but it does mean that it's not necessarily something you've done. This could be about them. Some people don't realize that their behavior is rude and offensive. When I was in the US last year, I had a conversation with one of my US friends, and you know, the comment she made is, oh yes, you know, a lot of us Americans are very brash. And I thought that was a really good word to use, because I found that, you know, like I do have quite a few friends, you know, from the US and a lot of colleagues, and I sort of, for me, I'm sort of like, oh my gosh, you know, they don't mind speaking their mind, or you know, speaking up and saying things in a way that I would feel is like, oh, it's a little bit rude, isn't it? But that's just my own values. That's how I perceive it. But for them, this is normal. So they might not even realize it. That's just their style. They might not know how to communicate effectively. They could feel that they've been treated rudely or disrespected or disrespectfully by yourself or someone in your workplace. And so they're like, no, why should I be nice to you? You were rude to me when I rang up. So again, they're on the defensive. They might not feel like they've been heard or listened to. And so they feel like they have to be a little bit more aggressive or more outspoken so that they feel heard. Of course, there are just some people who are just rude. Some people, again, that's the reality. Some people are just rude. There's usually some kind of underlying factor going on, but we don't necessarily know why. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're in a bad mood right here and then, but that just maybe then. Some people you just look and you go, oh my gosh, they always seem so miserable and unhappy. What a horrible way to live. It's just the way some people are. It's also really important to get all the sides of the story. So often we hear, there's two sides to every story. Well, there's three. There's your side, their side, and then somewhere in the middle of that is the truth. So we need to be able to hear both sides of the story and look at how do we try and come to a compromise. How do we resolve this so each party feels like they've been heard and that there is steps being taken to be able to address that. And again, communicating assertively with that genuine desire or that genuine need to resolve things is really important. If somebody, and you may know it, if you're like, I really want to sit down and talk about this and work it out because I feel awful, and they're going, yeah, okay, whatever. That doesn't really send the nicest message to you that, okay, they really want to work on this. So again, then you might sort of go, oh, okay, well, actually, why am I going to bother? Then forget it. So again, we want it to be genuine, but also assertive. So there are two types of communication. We have our verbal communication, obviously the spoken word, and then we have our non-verbal communication. That can include things like written communication, emails, letters, text messages, social media comments, so those sorts of things. Our body language says a lot, and often what someone is saying verbally contradicts what their body language is saying with them. Their non-verbal language, they can contradict. Someone could be crying their eyes out, go, oh my gosh, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's like, if you're fine, I don't think you'd be bawling your eyes out. Or someone, standing there in a huff with a really grumpy look on their face and their arms folded and, their face is red. What message does that send to you without them even saying anything verbally? The facial expressions, someone smiling or looking happy, we go, oh my gosh, they look so happy, they look so nice, or someone, as they often say, with a face like thunder, their face is red and you just see the rage in it. It's sort of like, okay, I'm going to get out of their way right now. I don't want to be on the receiving end of that. The gestures that people do, maybe, leaving a little I love you note in your partner's lunchbox or your children's lunchbox, or, it could just be a really nice gesture. That you've emptied the bins for someone and saved them the job. All those sorts of things, count as the non-verbal communication. Oops. And then just taking a quick look at the different communication styles. So we have our passive communication. That's the kind where someone would like shy away from it. So it's like, oh my gosh, did you forget to take the rubbish out again? And the passive communicator would be, oh, I'm so sorry. I promise it'll never happen again. I'll go and do it now. I'm really, really sorry. And they may be passive because they don't feel like they have a voice or that they deserve to be heard, or they may be too scared to speak up. Then you have the passive aggressive. So that is where the response is done passively. So it's not done face to face, right in front of someone or directed to them, but it's somewhat aggressive. So as the customer turns and walks out the door, you might poke your tongue out where they can't see you, or you might roll your eyes at someone, or you might have another kind of gesture that you do as you're walking off. It's passive aggressive. So again, it's not like you're not standing right in front of the person and rolling your eyes at them and poking your tongue out at them, but it's an aggressive response. It's like that kind of response again, but it's done passively. It's not done straight to their face. Then we have the aggressive communicator, and assertiveness is often confused with aggressiveness. So some people think that to be assertive, you have to be aggressive, which is completely untrue. I don't think I've met one aggressive communicator yet who I respect. I do not find aggressive communication a respectful thing. I don't respect someone who is communicating in an aggressive manner, regardless of why they're doing it. You know, because again, we're all in control of our own behavior. We need to know how to control our behavior and respond appropriately. So the aggressive communicator, they basically want people to agree with them and see their side of it, no matter the cost. It's like, you do this now. So they might yell, they might be intimidating, they might be physically abusive with it, or, you know, getting physical. It might be throwing something as they're yelling at you. Again, you know, that's very, very aggressive, completely inappropriate. So the most appropriate communication style, though, is assertive. And assertive communication is essentially about getting your message across in a respectful manner. So you're not only being respectful to the other person, but you're being respectful to yourself. So, but it's doing it in a manner that is nice. It's sort of caring. It might be a little bit confrontational, but it's not rude. It's being assertive. And how we do that is using those I statements. So the approach that I like to recommend is state what the problem is. Mr. or Mrs. Smith, I understand that you're really concerned about Fluffy, but yelling at me and swearing at me just makes me feel really offended. And I don't appreciate that. I would really appreciate it if you could please just stop from swearing, and then I'm really happy to talk this through with you and let you know what's happening. Or, you know, I noticed, John, that the milk always seems to be left out of the fridge after you've finished making your cup of tea. But makes me feel a little bit frustrated, because when we go to get a cup of tea, the milk's gone off and it's already lumpy. Is there any chance you could please just try and remember to pop it back in the fridge? Thank you. So again, you're stating what the problem is, how it makes you feel. So you're taking ownership for how it makes you feel in your behavior, but also what you would like to suggest as a resolution. And I apologize, those examples probably weren't very good. I'm just thinking on the fly here. But generally, the rule of thumb, if you're using an I statement, so I feel like this when you do that, or when you spoke to me like that, I felt like I was this small, or when this happens, it makes me feel like this, you know. So again, you're making it all about you. So that's being assertive. If you're using you, that's being accusatory. And what happens when you're being accusatory is the other person gets defensive. Then they want to counter attack. So they counter accuse so that you now feel like you're being accused. You get defensive. So then you want to accuse them back in return. And before you know it, it's escalated. So if you're saying you did this, you're being accusatory. You're not being assertive. If you're saying, I noticed this, or when this happens, I feel, you know, when you're using those I statements, you are being assertive. Another super quick trip, which I absolutely love, considering, you know, we're talking about conflict resolution here as well, but using this analogy of, you know, if your jacket caught fire while you were wearing it, you know, it's the old fire thing, stop, drop and roll. We want to use that, you know, in conflict resolution. So this is actually from my good friend, Deborah Hamilton, no relation, but this is, you know, she's got a book out on conflict resolution, which is brilliant. But her philosophy here, again, is stop. So when there's conflict happening, just stop talking and actually listen to what the other person's saying. Because if we're not listening, they're not going to feel heard. They're going to just keep going, and they might get louder and louder and become more aggressive because they just want to be heard. So just stop talking for a moment and actually listen to what they're saying. Drop the need to be right. You know, if the other person's talking to us in an accusatory manner, we want to defend ourselves. So we want to go, I did not do that. Well, what about when you did this? You know, just drop the need to be right, because our customers aren't always right, despite, you know, the old-fashioned saying that the customer's always right. They're not always right, but they do often have a valid point. And if we want to be able to resolve this conflict amicably, we need to just listen to what they're saying. Let's just hear them out. Drop the need to be right, drop the need to automatically be defensive, and then just let what they say roll off your back. If they're saying you're stupid, you're an idiot, or whatever, just because they're saying it, it doesn't mean it's true. They're just angry, or that's just their thoughts, which again is usually a reflection of them. So just let it roll off your back. Again, and using that, it just helps us to calm down before we start to react and become more reactive. So again, there are proactive things you can do in the workplace, you know, and remembering some of those things. If the workplace has conflict and it's not mentally healthy, we know what those implications are. You have a voice. If it doesn't feel right, you have the right to be able to speak up, but please make sure it is done respectfully and assertively. Just because you have a voice, sometimes it doesn't always mean that we should always say what we want to say. We need to make sure it's done respectfully and in such a way that's not likely to result in conflict. Stop, drop, and roll. Use your I statements, you know, being assertive rather than the you statements. Talk to the person, just say, look, I really want to be able to help you resolve this, but, you know, I'm sorry, I need you just to stop swearing at me before I continue the conversation. And if you do need that help, don't be afraid to reach out and get support. There is plenty of support out there. It's just a matter of being ready or being open to say, you know what, this stuff I'm dealing with is bigger than my capacity to cope. It is okay to reach out, you know, and talking to someone, whether it is going and seeing your doctor as a first port of call, talking to someone that you trust, talking to a therapist or a counsellor, you know, talking to EAP, a mental health first aid officer. Again, you know, there are so many platforms to be able to seek that help and support. So I hope that that's been informative. I know we have crammed a lot into that session. There's a lot there to absorb, you know, but the beauty of it being on a recording is you can stop and rewind and, you know, watch it over and over again to be able to just process the information. Some of the ways, I have online courses and programs, my book, and I've got an offer coming up for you on the next slide. I have ebooks. I also provide an EAP, or we call it Employee Wellness Program. You know, if your organisation doesn't already have one and you're interested in looking more at that, you know, please feel free to get in touch from that perspective. But this is a special offer from my publisher at Australian Academic Press. This is for the ebook. So around July last year, my book became available electronically. So super exciting to have that, particularly as a lot of people like to just either read on their phone or, you know, whichever reading device they use, maybe on the bus or on the train home. So some people don't find it as confronting or some people might feel a little bit weird, you know, pulling out their book if they're on the public transport reading it, whereas on your phone you can be more discreet. But this is to be able to purchase this at a discount. So I think the normal price offhand is like $22.50. But if you go to my website, there's a link there. Scroll down to the ebook one. It's the second one there. There's the hard copy link up the top, and then this is for the ebook. That will then take you through to the publisher's website. Just make sure you enter that coupon code, and you can use that coupon code as many times as you like. So if you want to buy 10 copies at once, pop it in. And then that will, you'll then get the links to be able to download and access the ebook. And here's my contact details, which I'm only going to leave up for a second because I know I'm going to hand back over to Danny now. So thank you so much for bearing with me. I hope you've enjoyed it and you found those strategies helpful and beneficial that you can actually put into action.
Thank you so much to Nadine for that great presentation, and thanks to everyone for listening in. We hope you have enjoyed it. A very special thank you to Nadine again for putting the presentation together, and for giving up her time to share her knowledge and experience with us. If you'd like to learn more about Gap Only, PetSure, or the Pause and Learn webinar series, please follow us on social or visit our website.